In these days of global disaster, all the money disappears with the fame. I'll say what I want, then burn my masters. And I suggest you do the same.
Hear my words, but don't breathe the air. You and I needn't speak to share. I'm so sick of the waiting now. I feel sick, so I'm laying down. Hear my words, but don't breathe the air. You and I needn't speak to share. I'm so sick of the waiting now. I feel sick, so I'm laying down. Laying down.
Alright, I won't name names, so he won't call legal. We'll call him Bo Jiden, and he killed Glass-Steagall. He's on the trail, off the rails, profits over people. But I won't call him a Nazi, cause I haven't seen his eagle. But I have seen his equal, and he's seated in the White House. I've seen his equal, and she lost the fight twice now. I've seen the evil of a man who'll shake the hands of workers, knowing they've been slaving for a feeble wage and little purpose, all to keep afloat his bloated lifestyle. I'll keep us focused on our phones in the meanwhile. If I'm a broken record, this has been a time trial, but I will not go quietly into the future I'm supposed to hand to my child. I will not politely hold my tongue when I see voters in the web of suppression. So I'm about to burn the list of things we shouldn't mention. Alzheimer's causes bouts of both confusion and aggression. Sentences that fall apart in paper-thin patience. Well, I have not spent the past 4 years practicing critiques only to need them for the next administration. And part of me would love to vote for Trump to really stuff you Biden diatribe junkies who would tie us to a chair to watch him push out Bernie Sanders, say he needs to just accept the loss and have your little celebration. Well, I don't know about you, but I have too much love for this misguided nation. So I can't take another president who treats the world like he's a wealthy tourist and he's just too good to talk to all us Haitians. My only choice should not have to be trading one president who chews the Achilles heel of race relations, who plays up all our prejudices, fears, and darkest motivations, for one who hands us over to the corporations like we've all been sex trafficked. And I wish that was exaggeration, but it's part nightmare, part fascination. Mostly fascists saying we're a cushion generation, while they got the funding made to lift you out your station. While you miss your shift at your third job cause you can't afford your medication, cause the pain of your mobility is tied into the need to keep afloat and keep your family just this side of devastation. And here's the catch to immunization. You might get to have a say in what they give your baby, but in 20 years your baby better be prepared to pay right through the nose to be inoculated. So don't you be surprised when all your insulin is confiscated, cause someone found a buyer who's prepared to hike the price up even higher. And if you land in a coma, just as well, because you're out the conversation. You're not around to stage a demonstration. You're not around to protest human rights being eliminated. Not around to protest all these voters being silenced and intimidated. Maybe you can hear it in my intonation. One man's revolution is another's renovation. One hand better wash the other or it's amputated. God, I hate to be so black and white, but gray has led us straight into the mist and now the lamp is faded. And I don't think that we have very long before the night is falling quicker than anticipated. Quicker than the stocks crashed, quicker than your IRA was withered and emaciated. So why obey the men who solved the crisis that they orchestrated? Why are we so pleased to see a corpse get up and speak that we ignore the way the corpse debated? That he spoke in fragmented misinformation, that he tried to make an honest man's mistake out of a fabrication, and that all the major networks eat it up and tolerate it. So whose side are they on if they can point it out in Trump but act like they don't see it in the man they want to call our savior? Who keeps paying you to do such sick, dishonest labor? Oh shit, we do? No shit, me too? Everything you buy will find a way to own or eat you. Companies that feed you fund agendas to defeat you. Strip your wits away, rip your wick away, ultimately put you in a place to have to loot to feed your kid today and then detain and beat you. How is such an obvious process not see-through? At least not without a UV light. This year we'll purge our liberties with zero end in sight. So if you can't cast a vote that gives you hope about our plight, pick up the pen, but in your heart it isn't right. Think about the millions going hungry every night. Have the guts to write in Bernie. Have the guts to fight. Have the guts to fight.
Hear my words, but don't breathe the air. You and I needn't speak to share. I'm so sick of the waiting now. I feel sick, so I'm laying down. Hear my words, but don't breathe the air. You and I needn't speak to share. I'm so sick of the waiting now. I feel sick, so I'm laying down. Laying down.
Hear my words, there's no time to spare. We killed democracy, it's rotting in the square. And with its last breath, it cursed the very air. With the toxic miasma of class warfare, convulsions were brief. It seized for a minute, then it ceased to fidget. It was just deep sleep in a city-wide gibbet. A lot of sweet nothings like the rations we were given. A film crew followed them into the city limits to document the distribution. A little piece of human interest in the mass confusion. Some nice shots of a clean white van. Neighbors helping neighbors with their clean white hands. Never mind the boxes being empty like the cans. Never mind a photo op that didn't feed a single man. And this is nothing you can blame on one single man or his supporting an immoral horde of sycophants. We set the stage, we wrote the play, we gave the man a script and highlighted every line he had to say. We're only in this boat because we chose to sail away. We didn't core out the decay, we let it spread. We watched the nation warp into the noxious dictatorship it is today. We made conditions perfect. It's almost like we want it this way. It's almost like we want it this way.
Hear my words, but don't breathe the air. You and I needn't speak to share. I'm so sick of the waiting now. I feel sick, so I'm laying down. Hear my words, but don't breathe the air. You and I needn't speak to share. I'm so sick of the waiting now. I feel sick, so I'm laying down. Laying down. I guess this isn't such an awful place. Is that what you want me to say? You prove it's possible to sleep for days and to still think you're right here awake. The cost of living isn't much to make, but God, it's so hard to save. And when they told you everything was safe, were you safe? Were you safe? Were you safe? Were you safe? I guess this isn't such an awful place. Is that what you want me to say? You prove it's possible to sleep for days and to still think you're right here awake. The cost of living isn't much to make, but God, it's so hard to say. And when they told you everything was safe, were you safe? Were you safe? Were you safe?
Fresh off the masses, the brand new cancerous growth, who has come here to vie for your vote. Come here to cry at the camps and to mourn at the shore for the bodies that float by the wreck of an immigrant boat. Then it's back to their luxury home, couple security booths and a moat. Couple cigars, little escargot, little booze and a soak. Just breathe in the steam and the smoke. Pink salt, lavender, candles are low. Shit, when you do what you do, gotta lighten the load. And he got a life of his own that's a sight to behold. And it's a lot to control, to decipher the code or to siphon the soul. The cost of a good night's sleep for the working elite is a bargain, no matter the toll. Worth any wager, and that comes straight from the mouth of the means to the goal that will swallow us whole. Ripe for the picking if you don't mind mold, and you know I don't. Maybe we're pleasantly prone, maybe we're taking a licking, compliantly ticking and ticking and ticking, but never explode. No, I don't deliver the prettiest image, but damn if it isn't an accurate vision of natural fission, of rage at the system and abject heartbreak, patiently waiting for any who will listen. That little blue bird who was watching your words is a federal carrier pigeon, a Langley first. It's a patient observer who hears what it wants and is trained for the worst. Oh, you got nothing to hide. They'll be the ones to decide that after they root through your purse, after they read all your text, after they raid your apartment, confiscate all of its contents, then conjure up evidence out of the air on a wing and a prayer and malicious intelligence nonsense. Any presumption of innocence long since gone, right along with your comforts and constants. Historically first they will come for the communists. So why in the fuck would I say I'm a communist? Well, it might be I love my community more than the monsters of opulence who are holding us hostage, who are vomiting promises. Might be I'm all done seeing our pensions and benefits harvested. Might be I'm all done watching the populace being disarmed in the guise of an armistice. Watching a woman collapse on the floor who will rise no more. She is wheeled out the door and you're next in line for the pharmacist. If you can get me to vote, it's a hard no confidence. But part of the charm of deception is politics wearing the mask of incompetence. It's all in the art of austerity, darling. It's all in the slide of the providence. Until home is as wide as your cubicle height and is only as deep as your coffin is. Maybe I'm miles away from impatience, aching to break off the head of the snake where the capital lust, reptile brain, and the margin of profit is. Like off with his. Like off with his.
I guess this isn't such an awful place. Is that what you want me to say? You prove it's possible to sleep for days and to still think you're right here awake. The cost of living isn't much to make, but God, it's so hard to save. And when they told you everything was safe, were you safe?
Who are these people?
Who are these people? I think we did it right this time. Hi, everyone. What's up? It's Indie News Now. This is Indie, easy enough for everyone to get. And we're going to talk about some stories. We're going to talk about some news. We're going to read some articles. And we're going to showcase and amplify independence. Because that's what we do here at INN and at Indie News Network. And at Indie News Now and at Indie Media Today, which is where we're live over on Substack. Hi, everyone over there at Indie Media Today. And we're live on YouTube. What's up, everyone? There's my brother, Angel Rivera. Check out Angel's show on Friday. He's got Angel in the afternoon. And Saturdays, he's got Pro Wrestling Talk with Miss Witchy Perfect and sometimes Alex Knight when he curates stuff. Descent in Bloom, I see, is here. Cowboy Kitty is here with some not great news about Natalia. That she's actually being deported, or they're in the process of doing that. We're going to talk about that later and put up the GoFundMe again. Kieran Pine, good to see you, sir. I see a lot of friends already in the chat, and everyone's just filtering in. That's good to see. You know, the last week when we launched this new show, it contained two major themes and a lightning round, and I thought that was a good way to probably continue this week, where there's some ICE news and some information and new stuff happening about ICE, and then there's a big fuck Israel segment. No, again? God, every week. Yeah, every week. Thanks. They make me do it. Stop murdering kids, stop dropping bombs, stop not cease firing, and stop stealing the territory, and maybe we'll be able to stop doing that. But we've got quite a bit here, and there was a really scathing UN report that came out about torture, and it wasn't just the UN, but we'll get into all that. And then we're going to get into the lightning round. I brought a couple of really long articles that I'm not going to be able to get through, but I wanted to drop and tease a little bit. And then I have a couple other shorter ones that we can get to, and then we can get out of here. I hope everyone checked out Boat Smashing into Other Boats on Sunday night. We went at our new time, 11 Eastern, 8 Pacific. We went a little bit more than an hour. I thought it went well. It was a typical Boats Sunday night show. We just did it an hour and a half earlier than we normally do. And this Sunday, you got to make sure to not be on YouTube INN8 The Ocho, because we're going to be doing an uncensored. That will be on Rumble and Kick and Twitter and INNnewsletter.com and all the other places that we go live. So before we do go live, I updated the slide, I think from last week. So we got a couple of new supporters. Thank you to those new supporters like Christopher Anthony. And there was one other one up there that, again, had hooked us up while I was away on vacation. So they're all up to date now. Sorry about that. And now we've got some space to add some new ones too. So if you're not on that wall yet and you are able to and a means, please, by all stretch, these are the ways to do it. Cash App, $ Indie News Network. You can do it over at ko-fi.com/Indie News Network, and it will actually show up now if you do hit the button and you do it through Ko-fi. Something will show up on screen. You can go to paypal.me/Indie News Network, do it as friends and family, and then they eliminate the 10% or whatever fee that Ko-fi takes, or that PayPal takes for a Ko-fi charge. IndieNewsNow.com, name of the show. It's also the website. We're live there. You can support us over there, IndieNewsNow.com. And then over at Substack, IndieMediaToday.com. We're live there right now, and there's already 17 people that have checked in. At INNnewsletter.com, which is the network's newsletter, and we put out very different content. Nobody Wants to Work Anymore, and INN News podcast, and goes live over there. Again, Boat Smashing into Other Boats goes live over there, and the uncensored ones are published. So there's a reason to subscribe to both. They get very different content. And there's a weekly update that I publish every Friday afternoon at 5:45 in the afternoon Eastern. And that's a summary of everything from Saturday up through that moment, pretty much. And that's something that I can usually has about 25 or 30 different things for you to watch, read, and bookmark and save and come back to all weekend and find stuff to check out. So, yeah, let's get to some of the stories. And where are we here? Blam. Hey, okay. Friend of the show, Arturo Dominguez from Decolonized Journalism had written, he's been on this Venezuelan migrant story. He's been all over ICE and Customs and Border Patrol and all that they've been up to since long before even Trump took office. And he's been growing his Substack presence, thankfully. We need more independence to grow. And he published this article, which is really good. Actually, I remember Dissent in Bloom a couple of weeks ago. We read an article, her talking about 287G, which is this law that allows ICE or Border Patrol to deputize American police forces or sheriff departments and make them part of their own force. And so Arturo has been compiling a list. He said, I analyzed the entire list of local and state agencies now participating in ICE's 287G program. Of the 1,154 agreements, Florida has the most with 334. Why am I not surprised? Texas has 220. Also not surprised. You've got very, Republican, MAGA-friendly governors there. The 287G program, again, deputizes members of local and state agencies to conduct immigration enforcement operations. So Arturo literally has this list, state by state, for posterity to maintain public access. He published this at the Antagonist magazine. So let's get to this list. And this literally goes state by state. And you can go right to your state right there if you want. All right. I'm proud to say that New Jersey has 0 agreements. So that's at least one little positive nugget that I pulled out of that. And this has gotten him some visibility, but like he says, under the authority of DHS, Immigration Customs Enforcement, and its Enforcement and Removal Operations Division, they utilize a program known as 287G under the Illegal Immigration Reform and Immigrant Responsibility Act of 1996. The act allows ICE to delegate to state and local law enforcement officers the authority to perform specified immigration officer functions under the agency's direction. Basically, they really want them to be able to assist in arrests, but also to potentially conduct their own arrests if they find something and there's no ICE around. Again, under the program, ICE trains and authorizes state and local law enforcement to conduct certain immigration enforcement functions, primarily by deputizing officers and granting them access to ICE databases, allowing them to issue detainers, and permitting them to execute administrative warrants. The program operates under different models. And this is important because there are 3 different models. You have first the jail enforcement model, which is designed to identify and process removable migrants with criminal or pending charges, all right, who are arrested by state or local law enforcement agencies, permitting them to interrogate inmates about their immigration status. This actually, I believe, was what had happened in the case of Anthony's sister-in-law, Natalia. Then there is the task force model, which serves as a force multiplier for law enforcement agencies to enforce limited immigration authority, with ICE lurking nearby during their routine police duties. That's messed up. This type of enforcement often takes place during traffic stops, calls for emergency services, and even traffic accidents, which is unbelievable. You get into an accident and all of a sudden you're taken off by ICE. Police often call ICE when they suspect someone of being an undocumented immigrant, in many cases, racially profiling victims of crimes. What a surprise. And then you've got the Warrant Service Officer Program, which allows ICE to train, certify, and authorize state and local law enforcement officers to serve and execute administrative warrants on immigrants in their agency's jail. The warrants are typically administrative, not criminal or judicial, and are issued by supervisory agents within ICE and not even a judge. So that literally is just to serve papers. Okay. Welcome, Jen Budd, who's a former ICE, former Border Patrol, Customs and Border Patrol agent. We read one of her articles last week on the show. So welcome. So getting back to Arturo, the program has been the subject of much scrutiny through the years due to Homeland Security abusing its surveillance powers against U.S. citizens, thus granting local and state police the same powers by granting them access to civilians' private data. That's not good. As of November 10th of this year, there are currently, again, 1,154 agreements in place with local and state agencies. 145 are jail enforcement, not good. I mean, they're all not good. 596 are task force, and 419 are warrant service officers. So those are the lion's shares, the latter two. Data provided by ICE, which is unbelievable that they even gave anything because they usually don't respond to any FOIA requests at all. All right. A ton of duplicate content was removed. He cleaned up the spreadsheet. This is an XLS format. That's Excel. Okay. And then it's searchable, of course. All right. And this should make the list easily searchable with Control F or Command F, depending on whether you're on Windows or Mac. So you can also Control F it in your just in your browser, because he listed it state by state. You can go down and let's just randomly, I'm looking at the state of Iowa. You've got 2 that are task force. All right. And you've got the Iowa Department of Public Safety and the Marion County Sheriff's Office. Those are big departments, again, that are now being tasked and trained and able to assist ICE in whatever they want, whatever they need help with. as long as they've gone through the training and deputization. So that was the first part of it. Was I wanted to mention that Arturo has collected this data. So if you want to look up your state and your county to see if your local sheriff is participating, you can do that. And I encourage everyone to do that. The links will be in the description on the Substack afterwards at indymediatoday.com. But then I also wanted to read this article that Arturo wrote the other day, and it ties into that 287G program where he's found that ICE is targeting migrant children using that 287G program. So, again, using the broadly debunked pretext of hundreds of thousands of unaccompanied children being placed with unvetted sponsors, ICE is planning now to target children and now deport the kids. With their parents, I don't know. I hope so. Since the Trump administration took over in January, it has spent billions of dollars targeting migrants across the country for dubious reasons. Why? Because it's red meat for his base. While the White House continues to suggest it's targeting the worst of the worst criminal migrants, it swept thousands off the streets who had no prior criminal record. Again, why? Because there's a 3,000 arrests per day mandate. Additionally, the Department of Homeland Security and the agents under its purview have targeted migrant children because they can, oftentimes taking them from their parents as they're being detained or deported. Is this a trafficking thing? I'm not going to suggest it might be, but there are some that certainly would suggest so. On Friday, DHS's Office of Public Affairs announced a new initiative employing ICE, that 287G program, authorizing again local and state agencies to target unaccompanied migrant children that, quote, the Biden administration lost or placed with unvetted sponsors, unquote. What their definition of unvetted sponsor is a whole other story. The agency continues to use a broadly debunked narrative, and they're claiming that as many as 450,000 children were placed with unvetted sponsors and are now sex slaves or dead, quote unquote. Completely untrue. Typically, sponsors are family members and frequently foster families. So 450,000 foster sex slaves? Quote, this new law enforcement partnership, known as the Unaccompanied Children Safety Verification Initiative, represents ICE's commitment to protect vulnerable children from sexual abuse and exploitation through collaboration with 287G law enforcement partners. Yeah, sure, that's what it's about. Sure. The primary focus, because there is certainly an alternative focus, of this initiative is to conduct welfare checks on these children to ensure that they're safe and not being exploited, and certainly not housed with anyone that also might be here in the process of going through getting legal if they're not already, or here legally and able to work, like that teacher that we talked about last week, and we've got to follow up for her too. All right. However, the system, of course, is far from perfect. That's a nice understatement. In 2024, the OIG for Health and Human Services issued a report titled, quote, gaps in sponsor screening and follow-up raise safety concerns for unaccompanied children, unquote. That is red meat again for Republicans to be able to go after Democrats and say they didn't do the background checks, so now we're going to go and clean this up. The report highlighted persistent problems during a major influx concerning the screening of sponsors who apply to care for children, alongside issues regarding post-release follow-up. Yeah, well, when you starve the agency and you don't fund it properly, You're intending for there to be gaps so that you can then raise this kind of a concern later on. It literally is built into the entire program. The Office of Refugee Resettlement, or the ORR, which is a program office under the Administration for Children and Families under HHS, is tasked with the evaluations. Let's see how they're starving the ORR, shall we? The report made various recommendations to improve its process intended to safely release children to sponsors. What they want to do is get these kids out of detention and in with someone that claims to be a family member that's going to take care of them. The report indicated that ACF concurred with the following recommendations. And it must be in quotes because the ACF, I'm likely guessing, did not actually really concur. There might have been a couple of people there that might have signed off on it, but I'm guessing that the general consensus would not feel this way, but I don't know. But the plan is to implement additional safeguards to ensure that all safety checks are conducted and documented as required prior to approving the release of a child to their sponsor. I think that's fair if you make the people available in a timely fashion to be able to make that happen and not drag their feet, which is what they're actually doing. They want to develop a reference guide to help case managers better evaluate sponsors' identity. Great idea. Take additional steps to ensure that mandatory home studies are conducted when required. Absolutely, when the agency is properly funded and they have the resources. They also want to provide additional guidance for case managers on when to consider recommending discretionary home studies. Again, these all sound reasonable, right? They want to ensure that sponsors' records in the UC portal accurately capture sponsorship history and information obtained after children's release regarding sponsors' suitability. We should be documenting if somebody isn't doing the right thing. 100%. I'm not saying that we shouldn't. And we need to develop an effective monitoring mechanism, because they don't have one, to identify children who don't receive timely follow-up calls after they're released to sponsors. But that's not what's happening here. Again, they need to develop that because it's not happening now. The analysis signals just how arduous the process can be during a major influx of migrant children, as seen in recent years. For example, the OIG's report found that despite HHS being required to make follow-up calls on 30 to 37 days after placement for every child and their sponsor, in many cases, the agency didn't follow up with the children. It did, and then it took an average of 122 days for a caseworker to reach out. Why do you think that is? Do you think it's because the caseworkers don't give a shit? I genuinely don't. Of course, it's not. It's because there's a backlog that's literally starved 4x, 30 to 37 days to 122 days. That's because they don't have enough resources. Even so, there's no basis for the idea that the Biden administration lost or placed with unvetted sponsors almost 500,000 kids, a point that senior fellow at the American Immigration Council, Aaron Reichenmelnick, who's one of the best immigration journalists out there, pointed out on X. He's also a lawyer, right? Their suggestion that over 450,000 children were placed with sponsors who were child predators or criminals is a bald-faced lie. Did it happen in some cases? Just as it happened under Trump 1.0 and under Obama, given the challenges of screening? Yes. Was it 450,000? Absolutely not. So he drills down a little further, quote, "The law requires that unaccompanied children be sent from the border to shelters within 72 hours, but shelters have limited capacity, so there's pressure to release them to sponsors. Both Democrat and Republican administrations have struggled with how to balance this pressure with adequate vetting." Yeah, you don't have the facilities. These facilities, of course, again, are also privately owned in a lot of cases, like Geo Group and Core Civic own the facilities. So it's costing the federal government a ton of money to deal with all of this, and a family member steps up and says, yeah, I'm a cousin, I'm an uncle, I'll watch out for this kid, I'll make sure that they come back. Put yourself into the system and get yourself tracked and make sure that the kid shows up and that all the visits are done. What we're seeing here again is that there is a backlog that we need 4 times as much coverage as we currently have just to be able to get even, let alone get ahead of the problem. Earlier this year, reports began to surface on ICE checking on migrant children released to sponsors, exposing them to their parents, who are often immigrants. Agents would then detain the parents, separate the families, and in many cases, deport them separately. It's so fucked up. Months later, the White House moved to detain migrant children indefinitely, a direct violation of the Flores Settlement Agreement, which dictates how migrant children should be treated, which is that if they have parents that they can be deported with, they need to stay with the parents. I remember the first Trump administration, them breaking up families and everybody freaking out about it. And it's terrible. It shouldn't happen. Family separations have not become the flashpoint they once were. Oh, thank you, Arturo. Still, they are certainly happening as many families have been separated and deported separately, leaving parents to wonder where their kids might be and leading to Latin American leaders like Maduro to declare that the U.S. is kidnapping children, while they declare that he's a terrorist in return. What started as targeting entire migrant families and deporting them together has become a new family separation policy. Again, the cruelty is part of the point. They're awful, awful people. They really are. Trump administration. I hate to say it. All right, Stephen Miller, Steve Bannon. It's racist as shit, and I'll call what it is. The new DHS policy only promises to exacerbate the issue. Great. Quote, we've jump-started our efforts to rescue children who were victims of sex and labor trafficking by working with our state and local law enforcement partners to locate these children, said Tricia McLaughlin, who works for DHS. She's a monster. She's one of these spokesweasels that stands up and says the most awful shit with a straight face, and then afterwards, like the douchebag with the punchable face that worked for the Biden administration, then runs around and says, well, look, I didn't really believe that, but that was my job to say, so I was going to say it. Because he's an asshole. So, and of course, now we're dropping frames because I'm talking about Biden and Trump and all of them. Anyway, it should be noted that following the 2024 OIG report, that the Biden admin said that it began to the process of improving the system through training, monitoring, technology, and evaluation. That means not at all. Remember who was in charge of the border? It was your vice president. Oh my God, what a train wreck. Support Arturo and support independent media and support journalism like this, because you're not getting this on corporate media, not like this. Not unless it suits their narrative to fearmonger about Trump. It might in this case, but the targeting of migrant children is not really a juicy story for corporate media, because Democrats were doing it too. So you don't really have the, oh my God, Trump is blah, blah, blah. I mean, they do that to a point, but again, it was already happening under Democrats. So corporate media ignores it, and so support journalists like Arturo. I'm actually a paid subscriber annually to Decolonize Journalism, which is Arturo's Substack, and it's extremearturo.substack.com. Again, go to Indie Media today after the show is over, and I'll have all the links to every article and every video that I run during the show. Everybody, it's good to see everyone. I'm glad to be hanging out with y'all on a Tuesday night. This is Indie News Now. For those who didn't see the scrolling ticker down there, Indie News Now Live. Check out Indie News Now. You can get cool merch there. You can get news over there, and you can watch this show over there. So all of the INN shows and AM Wake Up and the Independent Review when we co-stream that on weekday mornings at 10 a.m. Eastern. So, what else do we have here? Oh, one other thing about a follow-up story. We did talk about that nursery school teacher, that pre-K teacher that was arrested by ICE and dragged out of her school in front of everyone and arrested and sent to Broadview ICE facility. Well, Diana Santillana, the beloved Raito del Sol daycare teacher arrested with children present, was freed after a federal judge ruled her mandatory detention was illegal. She'll be back teaching soon. Good for her. Like, good for her. I'm glad she decided to go back because that would scare the shit out of me, I'd tell you right now. All right. So that was story number one, where we talked about ICE and a couple things that's going on. Again, are they now separating families? Are they now going after kids with 287G that have sponsors because they understaffed the agency, couldn't meet the deadlines for the sponsor visits and the checks? So now they're going to go and just sweep and deport everyone? Thanks. Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, not cool. Not a fan of this. But support the media you want to see. Support independent media. The ways to do that here are Cash App, $ Indie News Network. Thank you, Ralph. I just got an alert from Ralph. Ralph is one of the people highlighted because he's one of the super supporters, so thank you. Ko-fi.com/Indie News Network will pop something up on screen during the live stream. PayPal.me/Indie News Network. Again, IndieNewsNow.com. There's a tab to keep the media free, and you can support right there and tip us with a Stripe link. And then over at IndieMediaToday.com, we're live over on Substack right now. So glad that they decided to turn on live streaming. It's great. And then INNNewsletter.com. Sorry, I'm going to take a drink. So INNNewsletter.com. We go live a couple nights a week there, and we do a weekly update with everybody's links to all the different live streams, articles, and clips that are published throughout the week across the network, and even the co-streams. So let's see what's happening. Anthony needs a beer. I need a beer too, or I need something to drink for sure. My throat's all dry. Shows 22 live on Twitter, right? Nobody's saying anything. That's right. Go-Star, let me explain. So Twitter, like Substack, is cumulative. So the number that you see is the total number of people that have actually checked in, even for a moment on the show. It doesn't necessarily show how many are live there right now. Rumble and Twitter, I'm sorry, Rumble and YouTube and Odyssey and BitChute will show you how many are actually live right now. But even Instagram, they count view counts very differently. So they don't necessarily count the people, they count the views. And if you are even scrolling and you see it for 2 seconds in your feed, or 1 second or a microsecond, that counts as a view also. So I don't know. I discount a lot of the numbers that I see. And, you know, that's one of the things I've been looking at is there's really no inexpensive way to track a multi-stream. So I've often wondered, like, how did my show do? If you look at how this show did across all the different 9 platforms that we were live on, how many people watched? How many people clicked? How many people this? How many? There's no way to aggregate all of that. There's no way to gather all of that analytic data into one central place. You have to go place to place to place, manually enter it into a spreadsheet or some kind of database, and then have it processed. But it updates in real time, remember. So it's a little bit more challenging than that. You need to be able to plug in live to those platforms and be able to pull that and then be able to do something with it, take action. So we're gonna get up to our favorite or not so favorite or favorite part of the show, which is Fuck Israel, because we have to talk about every week what's going on and what they're doing to the Palestinian people and how they are trampling the world, and they're just, making a joke of laws and corruption laws and all different things. And it's not just Israel, but Israel's supporters and the Israeli lobby that is incredibly powerful in this country. So I'm going to start out with a video of somebody that describes what's going on here, because I think she can do it better than I. And funny enough, this is Earth Hippie at Hippie Goat on Twitter. She says, "This is a hard video to watch, forcing herself to watch this because we must know terrible, horrifying testimonies of sexual torture and rape of Palestinians by the Israeli army." So this is graphic. If you get triggered by this, you might want to cut away for the next 3-4 minutes, or more.
I was raped 4 times over 2 continuous days by Israeli soldiers. This is what a 42-year-old Palestinian woman arrested from Gaza in November 2024 said in her testimony to the Palestinian Center for Human Rights. During this, she was stripped naked, tied to a bed, brutally raped, beaten, humiliated, and filmed. The soldiers threatened her to post her photos on social media. Recounting what happened, N.A. stated that she cannot describe what she felt. She said, "I wished for death every moment." A 35-year-old Palestinian man arrested from Al-Shifa hospital in March 2024. He was raped by a trained dog, while soldiers beat him and sprayed pepper spray in his face. He was stripped and threatened with the rape of his family inside the Sedate Man military camp. He described the aftermath, saying, "I suffered a severe physiological breakdown and deep humiliation. I lost control because I could never have imagined experiencing such a thing." TQ. A 41-year-old Palestinian man arrested from Kamal Adwan Hospital in December 2023. He was subjected to extreme sexual torture, including threats to have his wife brought to the detention site to be raped in front of him. He was then violently raped with a wooden stick, and then he was forced to lick the same object. The torment was so severe that he commented, "From sheer anguish, I lost consciousness for minutes." M.A., an 18-year-old Palestinian boy, arrested in 2025 near a humanitarian aid distribution point. He was sexually assaulted when soldiers repeatedly raped him with a bottle. This was done to him and other detainees, sometime in groups. He shared the profound impact of this abuse, saying, "They violated our dignity and destroyed our spirits and our hope for life. I had wanted to continue my education. Now I am lost after what happened to me." These are only 4 testimonies out of many others gathered recently from Palestinian newly released from Israeli prisons and detention camps by the Palestinian Center for Human Rights that documented systematic sexual torture against Palestinian detainees. These are not isolated incidents, but a deliberate policy of humiliation and violence with the context of the ongoing genocide, the ongoing Israeli genocide against Palestinians in Gaza.
Man, it's hard to watch, I know. And, man, fuck Israel for that. But again, that's just, you can't even, that just begins to scratch the surface. So, the Dissident also wrote an article about this, as well as another one about State Haman, which she mentioned briefly. But that these people were taken from hospital beds. They were already sick or wounded or injured. And then they were like brutally raped. I mean, it's just, wow. But yeah, most moral army in the world, right? So we've got the dissident, friend of the show, original INN co-founder. Israel committed mass rape against Palestinian detainees. So she talked about this report from the Palestinian Human Rights Council, Center for Human Rights. Okay. Infamously, 5 IDF soldiers were caught on video during the genocide in Gaza, gang raping a Palestinian detainee at State Haven torture facility. Not prison, but torture facility. New victim testimony gathered by lawyers and researchers at the Gaza City-based Palestinian Center for Human Rights revealed that this was in no way an isolated incident. Again, collecting new testimonies from a number of Palestinian detainees from the Gaza Strip who were recently released from Israeli prisons and detention camps. The accounts revealed an organized and systematic practice of sexual torture, including rape, forced stripping, forced filming, sexual assault using objects and dogs, as that woman spoke about. My God, dogs. I can't even imagine. And what human being would imagine doing that to another human being? In addition to, of course, deliberate psychological humiliation aimed at crushing human dignity and erasing individual identity entirely. That also is one of the definitions of genocide, I believe. PCHR affirms that the testimonies do not reflect isolated incidents, but constitute a systematic policy practiced in the context of the ongoing crime of genocide against more than 2 million Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, including thousands of detainees held in prisons and military camps. And don't forget the West Bank either. Okay. Here's the one again. 42-year-old Palestinian woman and mother arrested while passing through a checkpoint set up in northern Gaza. So just trying to move freely. She says at dawn she heard the soldiers shouting, saying that morning prayers were forbidden. And I think it was the 4th day after my arrest from Gaza. The soldiers moved me to a place I didn't know because my eyes were blindfolded and they ordered me to take off my clothes. I did so. Of course she did, because otherwise they beat her. They put me on a metal table, pressed my head and chest against it, cuffed my hands to the end of the bed, pulled my legs apart forcefully. She felt the penis penetrate her anus, a man raping her. She started screaming and they beat her on the back of the head while she was blindfolded. She felt the guy raping her finish inside. She kept screaming and being beaten. She could hear a camera, so she believed they were filming. It lasted about 10 minutes, which is an interminable amount of time. After that, they left her for an hour in the same position, cuffed to the bed with metal handcuffs, her face on the bed, feet on the floor, completely naked. Just disgusting the way they treat her. After an hour, again, they did it again. But this time into her vagina also. She was beaten while she screamed. There were several soldiers, and of course they were laughing, and the camera clicking as it took pictures. I don't know what camera clicks now as it takes pictures, but this one was very quick and nobody finished. But during the rape, they beat her with their hands on the back and the back of her head. She says she cannot describe what she felt. Again, she wished for death every moment. After they were done raping her, she was left alone in the room, hands still cuffed to the bed and without clothes for many hours. Just, these people are animals. I could hear the soldiers outside speaking Hebrew and laughing. Of course they did. Later, they took another turn. She screamed, and of course they beat her whenever she tried to resist. After more than an hour, she's not sure about the time. Of course she'd lose track of it. A masked soldier entered, removed her blindfold, lifted his face covering. He had white skin and he was tall. He asked if she spoke English. She said no. He said he was Russian and ordered her to masturbate his penis, and she refused, and then he hit her on the face after raping her. That day she was raped. God, this is so horrible. Like, and this is just story. Again, I'm not going to read all these. I'll post a link to these. These are really, really horrifying and graphic. These are 4 stories here. Every Israeli accusation is a confession. The sick irony to these sadistic revelations is that Israel repeatedly used false claims that, of course, the Palestinians had mass raped Israelis on October 7th to justify actual mass rape. But of course, the evidence shows that Israel's claims of mass rape on October 7th were false and non-existent. Again, reiterating that Haaretz reported that at Shura base, to which most of the bodies were taken for purposes of ID, there were 5 forensic pathologists at work. In that capacity, they also examined bodies that arrived completely or partially naked in order to examine the possibility of rape, and according to a source knowledgeable about the details, no signs that any of the bodies attesting to sexual relations having taken place or of mutilation of genitalia. No, Muslims are taught to respect female bodies much more. That's why they cover them up with burqa and hijab. Like, it's all just ripped in racism and white supremacy and disgrace. Furthermore, a UN report on the allegations uncovered that, quote, the mission team, specifically for the forensic pathologist and the digital analyst, reviewed over 5,000 photos, around 50 hours, and several audio files of video footage of the attack. Okay, adding that, quote, in the medico-legal assessment of available photos and videos, no tangible indications of rape could be identified. And oh yeah, no witnesses have come forward to claim that happened either. They can't produce one. Here you go, more on Gez. The Israeli prosecutor investigating October 7th even admitted that in the end, we don't have any complaints. We contacted women's rights orgs, asked for cooperation. We were told they simply hadn't been contacted. And you think that if there were one woman that Israel wouldn't be holding her up and using her name every single fucking day? She was again forced to admit that the mass rape claims will not be able to meet the threshold of proof in court because there are none. Finally, a report for the UN Human Rights Council, which investigated again the claims of mass rape on October 7th, found no evidence that it happened and that many of the Israeli claims were provably false because Zaka admitted it, writing, quote, the commission has reviewed testimonies obtained by journalists and the Israeli police concerning rape, but has not been able to independently verify such allegations due to a lack of access to victims, witnesses, and crime sites and the obstruction of its investigations by the Israeli authorities. I'm going to repeat that. The Israeli authorities have obstructed investigations into whether there was mass rape on October 7th. If there was, wouldn't you think they would want to allow that to prove it? The commission was unable to review the unedited version of such testimonies. For the same reasons, the commission was also unable to verify reports of sexualized torture and genital mutilation. Again, they made it up. Additionally, the commission found some allegations specifically to be false, inaccurate, or contradictory with other evidence or statements discounted, which discounted these from its assessment. They made it up. These fabricated claims were not only used to justify the genocide in Gaza, but also used to justify the actual mass rape detailed in the PCHR report and, of course, previous reports. This is far from the first time we've talked about this. Reef and Colin have talked about this on INN News. I remember distinctly a report back in April that doctors had talked about treating patients that had been sexually tortured coming out of Israeli prisons. This is not a new story. But while Israel's claims of mass rape on October 7th have been debunked, victim testimony after victim testimony shows Israel unleashed real mass rape as official policy in its torture dungeons. Subscribe to The Dissident and support the dissident, the 307.substack.com. But this one is even harder to read. A new report shows that Israel tortured Palestinian children at State Taman, which again, torture facility, not prison, torture facility. This was this week, by the way, 3 days ago. This is how they're holding Palestinian men. Blindfolded, handcuffed, behind chicken wire, in a mass cell. I'm guessing that that's people sleeping. As of late, Palestinian hostages released from Israel's barbaric torture dungeons as part of the ceasefire deal have detailed the sadistic torture they endured at the hands of Israel. They're not all making it up. The most recent report from the NGO Defense for Children International documents the sadistic torture that Israeli officials unleashed on Palestinian children brought to the barbaric Israeli torture site, State Taman. The report documented the case of 16-year-old Faris Abu Jabal, who was abducted by Israeli forces while searching for aid with his father alongside about 25 other Palestinians near the Morag corridor the morning of, how fitting, September 11th. The report documented that, quote, an Israeli soldier interrogated Faris, severely beating him after binding his hands and forcing him onto his knees, quoting him saying, quote, he struck my forehead so hard it split open and required stitches, which of course I'm sure he got once he got to prison because he was bleeding profusely. Following this, again, Faris was transferred to State Haven, where he was subjected to another brutal interrogation, during which he was handcuffed to a chair with his hands bound behind his back and his legs bound to the legs of the chair. Each time he answered, I don't know, to an interrogator's question, another interrogator beat his head and legs. 16-year-old kid. The report quoted him saying, quote, in these moments I felt nothing but pain, and my sole focus was finding a way to escape the relentless beating and suffering. He would have told them whatever they wanted to know. He was then transferred to the quote-unquote disco room, a concrete room with speakers that blare music in Hebrew. It's sound torture. Faris was quoted saying, quote, they positioned my head right next to the speakers. Of course they did, because they're just monsters. The soldier present, distracted by the sound, was evidently playing a game on his mobile phone. I could tell from his tone that he had just lost, and in his frustration, he'd open the door and unleash a brutal beating on me, striking randomly. I remained in that room until day's end, enduring numerous assaults, including having my head slammed against the wall, being kicked, and having my hair pulled. For the crime of existing. Faris also told Defense for Children International, quote, one of the most challenging moments happened roughly a week prior to my release when a jailer approached me, displayed a photo of my mother in a compromising position through my cell window. They had edited a photo of her alongside a soldier. Look what our soldiers did to your mother. In the image, my mother was lying next to a soldier. I could see her hair. Do you want to go see your mother? Our soldiers raped and killed your mother and sisters. Of course they didn't. Or maybe they did, but I don't think they did. Like he said, they photoshopped it. But horrible. He said that they bound his hands above his head and his legs below, each with a separate cuff, raising him about a meter above the ground. Occasionally, they'd strike his legs. He wet himself frequently during that time. Of course he could. He can't control his bodily functions. They beat him with clubs to his legs and hurled vulgar insults at him, such as son of a bitch and other terms that, of course, he prefers not to repeat. He can't stand for extended periods, and he finds himself constantly seated because he was beaten and tortured and he needs to recover. The report also documented the case of a 17-year-old, Mahmoud Mayada, who was abducted by Israeli forces the morning of August 7th while he was seeking aid at a GHF site in Rafah, Gaza humanitarian quote-unquote foundation. We extensively covered the monstrosity, murders, and hurting and intentional starvation and suffering they caused there, with American contractors, no less. He was quoted saying, "Throughout this ordeal, the soldiers relentlessly beat and tortured us. They forced us into stress positions, struck us with sticks, subjected us to electric shocks. And although I was blindfolded the entire time, I could sense the brutality of the beatings and the manner in which they were inflicted. They marked an X on my back, and I understood that anyone bearing this mark would be taken to prison." Again, 17-year-old kid. These are children. Half of Gaza under the age of 18. He added, quote, "The crackdown unit launched stun grenades into the room." It's a prison cell. They can't go. Then they conducted a search and removed us from the premises. They pulled me aside, handcuffed me, dislocated my shoulder. I spent about 30 days unable to move my shoulder, enduring constant pain without any medical attention or assistance. Of course not. Why would they? The torture is part of the point. He also said, quote, "This unit also subjected me to severe beatings on my chest and other areas of my body, rendering me unconscious. My mental state naturally deteriorated to such an extent that he attempted to take his own life twice." The report also profiled another 17-year-old who was abducted by Israeli forces on the morning of July 11th while seeking aid again at the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation site in Rafah. Are we sensing a theme here? The NGO Euromed Monitor documented that after the bodies of Palestinian hostages were released from state Haman, quote, "medical examinations, forensic reports, and observations by the field team revealed conclusive evidence that many victims were killed after being detained. Their bodies bore clear marks of hanging, rope imprints around their necks, injuries from close-range gunfire, bound hands and feet with plastic restraints and blindfolds. Some bodies were crushed under tank tracks. We showed a picture of that a couple of weeks ago. While others showed severe signs of physical torture, fractures, burns, and deep wounds. The available evidence reveals a horrifying pattern of field executions and systematic torture of Palestinian detainees and prisoners, suggesting a deliberate policy aimed at inflicting the maximum possible physical and psychological suffering on those held up to and including their killing. And what do you think they have in store for the Lebanese? And what do you think they have in store for the Syrians? This is not exclusive to Palestinians either. Israel must be stopped. Other victim testimony recorded by the Palestinian Center for Human Rights showed that Israeli officials committed mass rape against Palestinian men and women at their torture facilities. Again, I'm not reading that one again. We read that one earlier. The recent testimony from the released hostages from State Haman revealed the graphic details of Israel's mass and systemic torture of Palestinians. Again, further revealed, because we've known about this shit for a while. And I brought a third article from The Dissident, which should not surprise anyone, but we've still got to talk about it. Another multi-million-dollar propaganda campaign aimed at Americans. So, have you noticed a lot of pro-Israel bots lately? I specifically noticed a sect of them that are trying to deflect and say, well, if if you talk about the genocide that Israel is committing, what about the other genocides around the world? What about Congo? What about Nigeria? What about this? No, we're not doing that. Yes, we certainly other genocides are important, but that is not. We're not taking our eye off this ball. We're not taking our eye off the fact that Israel is still torturing and murdering Palestinian children, women, babies, doctors, teachers, healthcare workers, you name it, every day, and starving the entire population. Fuck Israel. Now remember that without U.S. support, Israel would not be able to continue its occupation of Palestine, abuses toward Palestinians, or endless wars in the Middle East. I disagree with that because I think that the UK is providing as much, if not more, support, plus Australia. But certainly it definitely needs the US and it needs the weapons and the money that we're giving them. But I think that they also would be able to figure that out if they didn't get the money from us. Take the genocide in Gaza. Again, he cites Brown University's Cost of War project, which uncovered that the U.S., under the Biden and Trump admins, have already spent over $21 billion in military aid to Israel since the start of the war on October 7, 2023, with an additional 9.6 to 12 billion on military operations in Yemen and the wider region, sparked by or in support of Israeli military operations. That's between 31 and almost 34 billion and counting in U.S. spending. So the Cost of War project also noted that without the U.S. money, weapons, and political support, the Israeli military could not have committed such rapid, widespread destruction of human lives and infrastructure in Gaza. They could have, just not quickly, or escalated its warfare so easily to the regional level by bombing Syria, Lebanon, Qatar, and Iran. It's mostly political support and it's military backing to know that if any of those countries did retaliate against Israel, that the U.S. would also get involved. Without U.S. support, the Israeli government would have no combat aircraft to drop bombs and many fewer bombs. An increasing share of Israel's arsenal would be down for maintenance without U.S. government or U.S. contractor mechanics and spare parts. In addition, Israel's government could not have built a military of its current size and sophistication without U.S. financial backing. Thanks, Zionist douchebags in this country, you fucking assholes. At the same time, more and more Americans are beginning to oppose Israel. God, I can't imagine why. Due to its endless atrocities in Gaza and the West Bank, and its deep manipulation of U.S. politics and foreign policy through various lobbying groups such as AIPAC, J Street, Zionists of America, Beitar, and others. As the Israeli paper Haaretz noted, again, quote, Pew surveys conducted between 2022 and 25 show a rapid decline in support for Israel amid the war in Gaza. Even among conservatives. Wait, you mean conservatives don't like using our money to blow up brown people when we could be using it to give health care to the people here? Some 42% of Americans held a negative view of Israel in 2022. 3 years later, that number jumped to 53%. Still too low, in my opinion. The collapse in support is not limited to Democrats. Half of young Republicans under age 50 now hold a negative view of Israel, up to 15% since the war began. Again, because it's not a war. It's a massacre. It is one side bombing and leveling the entire the area and murdering everybody in that area that isn't running for their lives. This is why, as Haaretz has now revealed, Israel is launching a new multi-million-dollar propaganda campaign targeting Americans in an attempt to shore up American support for Israel and to keep the weapons and cash flow to Israel going. What a shock. Quote, The Israeli government has signed contracts worth millions of dollars in recent months to rehabilitate Israel's standing in American public opinion, both online and offline. $7,000 checks. Amid a sharp drop in support from the conservative right, Israel has hired firms to conduct not just Hasbara campaigns, literally they admit it, but also campaigns targeting millions of Christian churchgoers. You mean the Christian Zionists? Again, there are more Christian Zionists in the United States than there are Jewish Zionists worldwide. Bot networks to amplify pro-Israel messages online. Remember I mentioned that earlier. We've had a few of those in our YouTube comments. And efforts to influence both search results and the responses given by popular AI services like ChatGPT, which conveniently went down this morning. The article went on to report, quote, documents filed over the past 2 months show that the government of Israel, through their foreign ministry, the tourism ministry, and the government advertising agency, 3 different ones, signed multiple contracts in the U.S. to promote Israel's interests, quote unquote. Adding that, quote, payments are routed through Havas Media Germany GmbH, a subsidiary of the international advertising and public relations giant Havas. They also, by the way, are advertising on Rumble, and they're buying ads on Rumble. And they're propagandizing Rumble. They're Hamas's brutal war. What? All the hostages have been returned, guys. What are you doing? The investigation uncovered that, quote, the largest of the new Hasbara contracts was signed in August with a firm called Clock Tower X, owned by Brad Parscale, who led a role in Trump's digital campaigns in 2016 and 2020, a $6 million 4-month contract signed between his firm and Havas Media on behalf of the Israeli government. So $1.5 million a month for 4 months to blanket social media with pro-Israel propaganda. But not just social media, but publishing articles and offline media and television. The Israeli government directed Parscale's company to produce at least 100 core pieces of content per month, including videos, audio, podcast graphics, and text, and over 5,000 derivative versions monthly, aiming for 50 million impressions a month. Ben Shapiro-style numbers. Adding that, quote, 80% of the content will target young Americans on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. Again, bots targeting comments. And that, quote, campaign messages will be distributed via Salem Media Network. That's the network that, by the way, is buying the ads on Rumble. A conservative Christian media group that owns more than 200 stations and websites. Again, how convenient. The Salem Media Network produces a long list of staunchly Zionist conservative podcasts and radio shows with personalities including Dinesh D'Souza, Josh Hammer, Laura Trump, Dennis Prager, Larry Elder, Jack Posobiec, and Hugh Hewitt. So basically it's CIA radio. Along with this campaign, Haaretz revealed that Israel is running a similar propaganda campaign in an attempt to manufacture support for Israel's genocide in Gaza and an American war with Iran amongst American evangelical Christians. Guys, you're being manipulated. You're being played by the guys in little hats. Are you not reading this? Are you not paying attention? The report noted, quote, another Israeli campaign commissioned for the foreign ministry was proposed by the Show Faith by Works, owned by Republican consultant Chad Schnitger. I would be very careful. An evangelical operative connected to the Christian right. God, these people just grow on trees, it feels like. The campaign's budget exceeds $3 million, a tenth of which has already been paid to Havas through a final contract, which has yet, though a final contract has yet to be signed. That could be even more. Filings submitted in September describe a focus on churches and Christian organizations in the Western United States, aimed at countering declining support for Israel among evangelical Christians and raising awareness of Palestinian ties to Hamas and support for terrorism. This, by the way, why don't you just come out and say Utah? Because that's what's going on there. They're going after Utah. Salt Lake City. Utah Valley University, where Charlie Kirk was shot. Haaretz noted, quote, and they want the Mormon community as well. Very deep, devout of evangelical Christians. But again, Haaretz noted that, quote, according to these documents, these goals will be pursued through biblically based arguments highlighting the importance of Israel and the Jewish people to Christians, end times Catholicism, while spreading messages that the Palestinians chose Hamas. They murder Christian aid workers, not Israelis, which have been murdering them for the last 2 years, and all Palestinian Christians, and the 10% of Gaza was Christian. They celebrated the October 7th massacre and sheltered terrorists. You mean they celebrated their jailers being attacked for a day? Yeah, they did. Palestinians in Iran share genocidal intentions toward Israel. Again, every accusation is a confession, and more. Adding that, quote, the filings for the proposed campaign explain that the messages will reach their audience through the largest geofencing campaign in U.S. history. They're literally going to target specific locations. So when you go to a church, when you drive through a certain area, when you visit a certain location, something's going to show up on your phone. Again, a pitch to map the physical perimeters of every major church and Christian college in California, Arizona, Nevada, and Colorado during worship hours. That's a massive project, by the way. And it's creepily targeting people by their location. It's identifying attendees using commercial data, tracking them, and continuing to target them with relevant ads even after they leave the fucking church. And these rubes won't even have any fucking clue what's happening. That's the sad part. The estimated audience for the suggested project, 8 million churchgoers and 4 million Christian students. That's a pretty big number. That's the targeted audience. That's not how many they expect to actually influence. If they influence 50,000, that's a successful campaign. Along with this, the investigation noted that Israel is using this propaganda campaign to attempt to gain AI bots like ChatGPT and force them to repeat pro-Israel propaganda, writing, quote, a central element of Israel's campaign is its attempt to influence the popular AI chatbots that have exploded in recent years. But if they were on the up and up and what they were doing was legitimate, why would they need to influence with a propaganda campaign? One clause in the Clock Tower X contract reveals a search and language operation, quote, designed not only to promote the campaign on Google and other search engines, but also to generate framing outcomes in GPT conversations and AI-based dialogue systems. They want to train the AI to be Zionist. And when it's not, shut it down, like they've done with Grok multiple times. By the way, block Grok. You are able to block that account. Block it. Then it can't quote you. It can't look at your account. And you can't see its responses to other people because it's stupid and it lies. And don't take it as anything that's resembling a fact. It is a collection of the inputs that it sees. So what Israel is trying to do here, again, is flood the zone with slop. Zionist slop, so that the GPT that looks at the overall whole will say, oh, well, the overwhelming majority of articles say this, so this must be the case. As part of this work, the firm will also use the search engine optimization software Market Brew AI, which is a predictive AI platform that helps clients adapt to algorithms and promote their work on search engines like Google and Bing to help improve the visibility and ranking of relevant narratives. Again, Market Brew is a legit company. They're a newsletter company built around Mail Brew. All right. But Market Brew is used by companies all over the place, but this is being used for nefarious purposes. More on the Haaretz investigation. Another Israeli campaign disclosed in the Foreign Agents Registration Act filings was signed with SKD Knickerbocker. We talked about them before. Also via Havas for the Foreign Ministry, worth roughly 2.5 million shekels. Under the contract, the firm, again, actually considered close to the Democratic Party, will develop a bot-based program on various social media channels that floods the zone with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs pro-Israel message. The firm will also recruit up to 5 spokespersons to promote Israeli messages in international media and on social media alongside those bots, which will operate on TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And then a separate campaign run by Targeted Communications Global for the tourism ministry will use influencers and commercial content to promote travel to Israel for another cool 1.2 mil. By the way, fuck Haaretz too. They're garbage. But what this investigation shows is that Israel is desperate to run a mass-scale, multifaceted propaganda campaign to get Americans to support Israel. And not even to support Israel, to just ignore what Israel is doing and not be opposed to Israel. Along with this direct government-funded propaganda campaign, Israel has used its U.S.-based pro-Israel billionaires to take part in similar propaganda campaign. People like Bill Ackman. When he last visited the U.S., Netanyahu famously met with Zionist influencers and told them that they had to secure that part of the base of our support in the United States, adding that we're going to have to use the tools of battle. The weapons change over time. We have to fight with the weapons that apply to the battlefields in which we are engaged. And the most important ones are the social media. Just like a fucking boomer. And saying, and the most important purchase that is going on right now is TikTok #1. And I hope it goes through because it can be consequential. And he made sure it happened with his boy Larry Ellison. Again, speaking of Larry Ellison, Netanyahu was referring to the purchase of TikTok by Larry Ellison, the pro-Israel Oracle founder, who is a personal friend of Netanyahu and the largest private donor to the IDF. And now Ellison's son, David, who's the owner of Skydance Media Production Company, also played a part in this propaganda campaign. What a surprise. Buying Paramount, the parent company of CBS News, and then buying the Free Press and installing the pro-Israel propagandist Barry Weiss as editor-in-chief. Now he's making a bid for Warner Brothers Discovery. Since Weiss was installed as editor of CBS, recent job cuts at CBS News disproportionately hit those whose coverage was critical of Israel, a staffer told Variety. What a surprise! They're purging anyone that questions the narrative. The New York Post reported that Weiss fired journalist Deborah Pata and installed Chris Livesay as the Israel correspondent at CBS News, whom the paper reported showed strong support for Israel, strong support for murdering Palestinian children. With American support for Israel declining, Israel is now more desperate to shore up American support as their mass propaganda campaign, and it's certainly not doing anything to help the narrative that Jews and Zionists control the media. Again, not just Jews, Zionists specifically. Zionists that are in support of advancing the Greater Israel Project, which I have repeatedly said should not be allowed to exist, nor should Israel as a country. Fuck Israel. This man is a Pulitzer Prize winner, a Nobel Prize winner, Mossab Abu Toha, journalist. He says, I'm running out of words as I watch the devastating scenes of rainwater flooding people's tents in the Gaza streets. This was 4 days ago. I talked to my family and my wife's, all our relatives who live in tents in the street and deeply suffering. I'm disgusted with a world that has allowed Gaza to continue suffering even after the so-called quote-unquote ceasefire. Not a single house has been rebuilt. On the contrary, Israeli terrorist forces are blowing up more houses in areas of Gaza than they're still occupying. There are babies who may not survive the cold, and yet, who cares? He's posting this so everyone can see. He's posting this because he will never forgive or forget. He's posting this so future generations will witness the cruelty of the occupation and the leaders, as well as those who support them, who enable this suffering. People like Barry Weiss. People like Larry Ellison. This is inside their tent. Look at how deep the water is. This is outside the tent. Kids' feet totally submerged. So we got that. This is a wider shot. More than 35,000 tents were flooded with heavy rainwater across the strip on Friday. Torrential rains. Mahmoud Abbas, really? Palestinian children are disappearing in Gaza while seeking food. They never make it back home. 6 or more have gone missing in the latest count. And here's a larger, wider shot. Over 35,000 tents again. Mohammed Safa, I believe he is the UN representative. Heavy rainwater across Gaza, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, is an act of genocide. Shame on our country, shame on the world for allowing this to happen. Then there's this story. Now, what's really interesting is that this actually came out like 2 months ago, but somehow really surfaced this week. This account, the International Cyber Digest, says, we've had multiple reports in the comment section indicating that the app is present on more Samsung device types and regions than the sources first told us. What are we talking about here? Well, back on November 14th, this account reported that there's unremovable Israeli spyware, which was found on all Samsung devices. Well, not all. Samsung faces backlash over AppCloud, an Israeli-developed app pre-installed on budget Galaxy A and M series devices. Some of you in the chat may have an M device right now, for all we know. Investigations reveal that this app is embedded in the operating system, preventing full removal. Even when disabled, AppCloud remains on the device, reappears after updates, and can covertly install additional software. Wait, what? How the fuck does Samsung allow something like this to happen? And now we find that it's not just the A and the M series, but the scope is even bigger than we thought. What's going on here? Well, our friend the McGuire posted the receipts back from September 18th at Quds Network, which said that a recent report revealed that AppCloud, an Israeli application developed by Iron Source, comes pre-installed on certain Samsung devices, particularly Galaxy A and M models, and cannot be fully removed. The app automatically collects user data, including location, device fingerprints, and IP addresses. Why would they need to do that? Okay. An Israeli war criminal recently boasted at a press conference that anyone who owns a mobile phone carries a piece of Israel in their hands, proudly highlighting Israel's deep infiltration into tech and global industries, including smartphones. So that's not good. Throw away your galaxies. Abu Bakr Abed also mentioned this months ago that Mahmoud Abu Musalam is a cybersecurity engineer in Gaza right now, writing so significantly about Samsung breaching the privacy of users and collecting the information for the Israeli army. So many in Gaza hold Samsung devices. Samsung is complicit in the genocide in Gaza. All right. And then there was some info about this. And again, I'll put all the links in the description afterwards. But Eye on the Sky actually shows the screenshots of exactly what App Cloud is allowed to do. Have full network access, view network connections and Wi-Fi connections. Of course, run at startup. Download files without notification. Read Google service configuration, including your emails. Measure app storage space. Why would they need to do that? I guess to be able to know if it could be installed. Run a foreground service. Advertising ID permission. Query all packages. They shouldn't be allowed to do that. It can also prevent the phone from sleeping. And run a foreground service with the type special use. I don't know who gets that permission or knows how to execute something like that. Further, it's described in the App Store or on the phone when you go for more info. It offers the Aura out-of-the-box experience. It is some kind of post-install recommended apps set up from the carrier. Bullshit. The carrier doesn't even know about it. It's done from the manufacturer. It asks for your age and gender, then recommends that you install popular apps. Developed by IronSource, an Israeli advertising company. It has way too many permissions. Okay. See the Universal Android debloater, and you can learn more about that. So fuck Israel for doing all of that and putting this kind of tracking software. And remember when they said that they could like blow up your phone or that they can control or track or monitor from anywhere? It's using apps like this on a Samsung phone. I'm not done with fuck Israel yet. Okay. This is a crazy video and interview that was done with one of the people who was on the global Samud flotilla. All right, we talked about that and how they were arrested. So I want to play this video. This is the testimony, but I have it in video form and it's easier to just watch the 2 minutes. And we'll read if there's more that context, but check this out.
I saw him coming and then he looked at me. Like I could tell like that he was probably looking for me. Because he was like looking and then asking people, and then there was one person who pointed at me, and then he came around and then he stopped right next to me, and that's when he called me, terrorist, and that I will be treated like a terrorist.
And you felt immediately that you needed to talk back.
And I told him that he's because the Israel, like, and you can tell with everyone there. They have the sense of arrogance. They really truly believe that what they're doing is right. They truly believe that there is no genocide. They truly believe that they are not starving children. They truly believe that a baby in a mother's womb is a terrorist. They truly believe all of these things. They are in this bubble of like pure terror. They are surrounded by violence. And the only reason they are surrounded by violence is because they are bringing the violence, I don't think I could be a violent person because I don't feel violence inside of me. Because this is not how I feel when I look at human beings, So you really, really have to hate something so much to believe that the violence that you're bringing is not violence, that it's a righteous thing, that this is what they deserve. So, and when you have someone like that in front of you, I mean, obviously I'm not going to sit down and let him talk to me like that. Not because I'm taking it personal. He can say whatever to me. I'm not taking it personal. But for the Palestinians, to let him know that we see what they're doing and that the Palestinian population is not alone.
That's brave and courageous. So what had happened was this woman is Jewish, European, and was on the flotilla, and Ben Gvir sought her out. So this is Yasmin Akar. Ben Gvir came to me very close and said, "You're a terrorist and you will be treated as a terrorist in the coming days." I got up and told him he's a coward. I was like, what the fuck? She said, "Being back is intense. This was my second imprisonment in Israel since June. I didn't rest because the work continues. I've been traveling, doing advocacy, meeting organizations to help liberate Palestine. Since the ceasefire, we're still seeing Palestinians being killed. The flotillas didn't stop when we're detained. The Samud flotilla took over a month before interception. Technical issues, Tunisia, harsh weather, being bombed in Tunis, then bombed again in international waters. Finally, we were intercepted. 42 boats, 462 activists, violently. They already knew some of us. They approached me, Mandela, Greta, Tiago by name because they had been there before. Near Ashdod, they switch. First nice, then brutal. I'd been handcuffed, called names. Some made sexual comments. They handed us to police, controlled by Ben Gvir. I was shocked to see him. Getting to the kneeling area was horrific. They dragged me, pushed me down. When I turned my head, I saw security, and then I saw Itamar himself. Shock and disbelief. I told my comrade, "We can't allow this." I started chanting. I'd written "Free Palestine" on my shirt because they don't allow Palestinian symbols. When he came, I sat straight. I showed him the shirt. I chanted "Free Palestine" and called him a baby killer. Everyone started chanting. They told me to be quiet. I said no. I stood. They grabbed my neck, surrounded me, threw me down, beat me. They handcuffed me again and pulled me up by the cuffs. I kept speaking, telling them that they're committing genocide, starving people, killing babies, and that there will be an end to Israel. Can you imagine that? Saying that to them as they're beating you? They dragged me to where there were cameras, pushed me down, smashed my head to the ground, kicked me in the sides. They dragged me into the Ashdod hall. The women officers are brutal. They beat me again. Tried to take my shirt off. I refused. They put me facing the wall, told me to open up my legs, and kept kicking them. They slammed me into the wall, pulled my hair, stripped me naked. I guess they got the shirt off, mocked me, called me names, told me it would be worse this time. They recognized me. I recognized some of them, probably from their fucking awful TikTok dances. Then interrogation, photos, fingerprints, threats. American Jewish citizens were treated differently than Middle Eastern or North African people. Zionism, like she said, is racist. They have a problem with Muslims. Muslim women were forced to remove hijabs. They laughed. They humiliated Muslims. People of color were mistreated. Palestinians, of course, were treated the worst. One officer said to her, "You're German, but you're not German. Your country committed the real genocide." I said, genocide is genocide, and Germany's crimes don't justify theirs. My Adalah lawyer was next to me. Later, Ben Gvir came again, and he said, quote, "You're a terrorist, and you will be treated as a terrorist in the coming days," unquote. I stood up and told him that he's a coward, that we will hunt him down, that he's a baby killer, and the world won't look away. He called me a terrorist again. I again said, he's a coward, and he rushed out. Because you can be sure that that motherfucker doesn't have anybody talk back to him and treat him with disrespect. Ever. So it must have shocked him to hear someone as a prisoner like that speak to him that way. Good. They believe there's no genocide, like she said. All right. They live in a bubble. They bring the violence. This was the most amazing, remarkable line. I wasn't going to sit and let him speak like that. Palestinians can't talk back to soldiers. It's my duty to speak for them. I used my privilege, being from Europe with a strong passport, to speak for Palestinians. That's amazing. After that, it was interrogation, then deportation. And she reminds us and herself that anything I go through is nothing compared to what the oppressed face. I don't live under bombs. Losing a job shows I'm on the right path. They try to cancel me because truth stays. I'm not the movement. Palestinians are. She says that she'll continue. Global capitalism is why this is happening. Everyone profits from suffering. Amen, sister. When Palestine is free, the work doesn't end. The fight against colonialism and imperialism has to continue because they're not going to rest if they lose. When I was young, I thought I would change the world. Later, I realized maybe I would start with small steps that spark others. My heart burns for justice. I cannot stop. That was awesome. Again, she shames the whole of Israel. Amazingly courageous. Yasmin Akhar, German. And then we've got also, this is another crazy story. David Cronin, who actually is also on Substack, boasting of transparency. He writes this for the Electronic Intifada and Indie Media Award honoree. One of the top independent outlets. Go follow them at electronicintifada.net. Boasting of transparency, the EU won't say who paid for an Israeli propaganda trip. So David is in the UK. All right. The European Union is refusing to say if Israel has paid for activities undertaken by a prominent official. That would be a problem. Katharina von Schnurbein, the EU's coordinator for combating anti-Semitism, visited Israel in late May for what was essentially a propaganda tour. During it, she dismissed the well-documented evidence that massacres were being carried out in Gaza as rumors about Jews. Really? Exactly who footed the bill for the trip, which involved discussions with Gideon Sa'ar, Israel's foreign minister, has not been disclosed. The EU's executive, the European Commission, has invoked data protection rules to reject the FOIA request made seeking details about the trip's costs and whether Israel covered them. Should be a very basic question: who paid for this trip? The European Commission's secrecy over this matter exposes as laughable a recent claim by one of its spokespersons that it is among the world's most transparent public institutions. As a basic minimum, a transparent body would be upfront about who pays for activities carried out by its employees, wouldn't it? In a lengthy reply to my request, while saying no, the European Commission suggested that von Schnurbein needs to be shielded from scrutiny. Why? The person, even though she is not a high-level official and does not form part of the senior management of the EU, has already been the subject of journalistic articles attacking not only her professional capacities, but also her personal character, the reply stated. Well, when you deny and whitewash genocide, they tend to do that. And of course, it didn't cite any examples of such articles because they don't exist. The reply amounts to willful deception. Von Schnurbein, a Bavarian aristocrat, may not be at the top of Brussels' hierarchy. Nonetheless, she is a representative of the EU and is authorized to speak on its behalf. She belongs to the central administration of the European Commission, answering directly to the Nazi Ursula von der Leyen, the institution's president. The European Commission's insistence on secrecy indicates that it wishes to conceal details about von Schnurrbein's close relationship with Israel and its network of lobbyists. Again, what do you have to hide? If Israel paid for it, that's a problem. If the EU paid for her to go on a propaganda trip, that's also a problem. Revelations about this Israel trip in May have already proven embarrassing. The website EU Observer has published an internal paper showing that von Schnurbein made bizarre allegations during it about her own colleagues who had taken action in support of Palestinians. These included the allegation that a bake sale organized by some Brussels officials to raise funds for a Red Cross Gaza appeal risked causing ambient anti-Semitism. Because yes, when you shed a light on the fact that Israel is murdering Palestinians, people tend to not like Israel as much. Yeah, that happens. The revelations prompted calls by human rights activists and some lawmakers for von Schnurbein to be removed from her post, and she should be. Von Schnurbein's job contract makes no reference to Israel or any other foreign country for that matter, as her responsibilities are limited to fighting anti-Semitism within Europe. It follows that her work should be financed solely by European governments. Under rules applying to Brussels officials, von Schnurbein is required to only act in the European Union's interests, not on behalf of any external Middle Eastern state. She's obligated to seek permission from the EU's hierarchy before accepting any gifts. Also, remember that the UK and that Great Britain exited the EU, Brexit. So they're not even part of this. The US and Great Britain are not part of this. That would include trips that are paid for by foreign governments or pressure groups. All right. But the German government is certainly very close with the Israeli government now. There are elements within the Swiss government, the ones that arrested Ali Abu Nima, that are Zionist aligned. You've got even parts of Turkey and parts of France. Macron is aligned with Israel, even though he's been critical occasionally. They're all pro-Israel. But they're not allowed. This person should be acting in the best interests of Europe, not Israel. But did they just buy off yet another person who's influential? It's not the first time the EC has withheld basic information about her activities specifically. In a separate FOIA request, he sought details of how many staff have been allocated to her office and what tasks those staff have been assigned. Again, the most transparent agency in Europe should be willing to disclose that. Although the European Commission rejected the request on data protection grounds, I've learned from a well-placed source that von Schnurbein heads a team of 6. That means she has far greater resources than Marion Lalisse, the EU's coordinator against anti-Muslim hatred. Lalisse has no staff aiding her work. So 6 people to help the anti-Semitism one, no staff to help the anti-Muslim one. That fact alone speaks volumes about how skewed the EU's priorities are, especially because there's a massive influx of Muslims that have come in the last decade thanks to all the refugees. Rather than sticking to her actual job of protecting European Jews from persecution, which is still anti-Zionism, is not anti-Semitism, von Schnurbein has weaponized anti-Semitism in order to smear Israel's critics. She and Jonathan Greenblatt must be peas in a pod. She's done so with the help of a fairly sizable team. Jonathan Greenblatt being from the Anti-Defamation League, the ADL, which everyone in this country has realized is over-the-top ridiculous propaganda. By contrast, the fights against hatred of Muslims and racism more generally have just been given lip service by top politicians in Brussels. Worse, those politicians are encouraging xenophobia by pursuing policies hostile to refugees, like I mentioned. Ursula von der Leyen, lest it be forgotten, gave her complete backing to Israel's genocidal war against Gaza in its initial stages. Her German compatriot, Katharina von Schnurbein, has gone to extremes in trying to downplay Israel's most egregious crimes as mere rumors and smearing those spreading the rumors. No, I've seen videos of headless fucking babies in Gaza. Those are rumors. It's disgusting that she denies that exists. As the EU has enabled and excused the attempted extermination of Palestinians, nobody should be surprised that it's trying to hide some key details. So, a little bit of European internal politics, but fuck Israel, because it's not just about controlling the United States and our media and our narrative, but also doing it overseas as well. Not just in England, not just in Australia, but also in the EU. All right. So that's our lengthy fuck Israel segment. Thank you for sticking with me through that. Fuck Israel, like we say every week, because if they didn't do all that, we wouldn't have to report on it, and then we wouldn't have to say that every week. Justice is coming. I really wish that were the case, but and that right soon. I know what that is, and I don't even want to mess around with that right now. Terrible. Support independent media if you can. Again, Electronic Intifada, Indie Media Award honoree. Went to a few of them here. That's our wall of fame. Those are the people that have actually supported INN with some kind of tip. Patreon monthly support, Substack subscription, Stripe tip, Cash App, Ko-fi. Those are the ways to do it. Cash App, $, Indie News Network. By the way, I saw a Talking Wombat. You see in top left corner, one of the very first patron supporters hanging out in chat right now on Substack. Thank you so much. Love you. Appreciate you still being around after all this time. Okay, ko-fi.com/Indie News Network. We got paypal.me/Indie News Network. IndieNewsNow.com, where you can watch this show live. You can check out independent news completely free and ad-free. And you can also get merch. We got merch there too. And we can also get over at Substack, IndieMediaToday.com and INNNewsletter.com. We got two different Substacks that I support and publish to. So we have a couple of lightning round articles. I just wanted to briefly go over them. I'll drop the links again in the description afterwards. You'll be able to read them in full, but they're really long. And this one was, as an audio, almost 25 minutes long. From Jonathan Cook, another Indie Media Award honoree. He's from the inaugural class of 2022 and one of the best out there, always been a fan. He talks about breaking free of media groupthink and that it's scary. I know, I was forced to do it. And we talk about conditioning your news feed. We talk about changing your consumption model so that you're not constantly engaging with trolls, because the algorithms reflect whatever you engage with. So the more you argue with those trolls, the more the algorithm wants to show you those trolls because it thinks that it's keeping you engaged to do so. All right. So Jonathan lays out here that, number one, you have to commit career suicide and be willing to shun all of the norms and institutions that you once held dear because they all participate in groupthink. You then become an outcast. You then regress in media. All right. And this is where I'm almost at right now, because I'm struggling to find sources, more reliable sources that I trust. And I'm actually writing an article about this specifically when it comes to labor, but it's not just about labor. It just feels like the number of outlets that are trustworthy, even amongst Indie Media Award honorees, has dipped significantly in the last 2 to 3 years. And that is because there are so many different things to cover and so many different angles to cover it from. It's really hard to navigate and get it all right and have the correct angle and position and skepticism across the board. And there are so few that I feel that are, sadly. Why are we so craven? All right, here's an outline of the various pressures, some practical, others structural. Partisan reporters, right? And again, this is very long. And this talks about Rafi Berg and the BBC. We extensively covered that story, all right? The partisan bureau staff and media lobby groups. All of this machine to ensure the narrative continues. Talking about If Americans Knew, which also is Israel-Palestine News, all right? In 2004, Israeli staff at the AP News Agency's bureau in Jerusalem had refused to either use or return video footage sent in by a Palestinian cameraman that showed Israeli soldiers shooting an unarmed youth in the abdomen. Instead, they destroyed the tape. Like, it's a blanketed campaign across a series of industries and groups to ensure that this continues, that this groupthink continues. And then what do we have to do? We have to rebuild our worldview. All right. And again, this is in the context of the BBC and Israel, but it can really be applied universally. I also wanted to shout out, I am an annual paid subscriber to a Lily Bit. Don't always agree with what she has to say, but I really respect and love the perspective. And her article says that I'm so goddamn tired of pretending that this is all normal. And I started reading this, and like I almost wanted to share it with my wife. Like I feel like normies might relate to this, even people that aren't plugged in, right? But that, and how poisonous a lot of the stuff that we're ingesting a lot is. Talking about here vapes and how school kids are getting hooked on vapes. Kids who don't even have bank cards are organizing bulk nicotine orders through Snapchat and Discord, sucking down mango ice and cherry freeze and cotton candy cloud in bathroom stalls between algebra and history class. Right? Again, and that's just one little permeation of life. And it says, while we believe we're in control, we've long been part of a game. We can't win anymore. We've gotten used to addiction as everyday life, not as a problem, but as the normal state. Addiction to our phones, addiction to social media, addictions. And she talks and criticizes THC and cannabis and the legalization and normalization of this, of that as well, which I'm in favor of. But TikTok, Instagram Reels, all right, grabbing you within seconds, the algorithm watches everything. How long you linger on each video, what you replay, what makes you stop scrolling. It then builds a psychological profile more detailed than any therapist could create, and then uses it to serve you exactly what'll keep you paralyzed. 9 boring videos, then one that makes you laugh. Back to mediocre content, then something that triggers outrage. They're not just showing you content, they're conducting behavioral conditioning on a mass scale. This is, again, a fascinating article that is lengthy. Like I said, it's lengthy, but worth the read. And I highly encourage you read it. And if you don't want to read it, you can load the Substack app, and there's actually a listen to mode for free. So you can listen to this in reader mode and have it dictated to you. Very cool. Subscribe to a Lily Bit and support her independent journalism. I paid, I think I paid it was like $1 a month, but I got it for like $8 a year. She dropped the price to for a limited time, just to have some stake, just for some dollar amount, because it helps that algorithm. I also wanted to point out that we did show this Banksy painting. You remember when Banksy painted that thing on the side of the court in London? It was actually, I believe, the court that Julian Assange was in, but it's the Palestinian girl getting beaten by the judge with the mallet, with.
He was still
but
here. scrubbed out, obviously.
Check this out. That was the original Banksy painting. Back up. There it was. All right, you see it? She's holding the protest sign, and the judge is actually beating her with his gavel. All right? They tried to sandblast this off, and it left like a shadow, which was actually even more profound than the picture itself. But then they covered it up.
Here, scrubbed out, obviously. But what we found was a boarded up version with security cameras and a padlock.
Look at this.
The lengths they have gone through because they don't even want you to see the scrubbed out version. So if they didn't want us to see it, we're going to wear it. So we put these on t-shirts. You can get these at our website. You can also get the redacted version because they can't censor what you wear.
I'm not a fan of profiting off of Banksy's work, but I do think that that's an interesting act of defiance. So good on her for trying that. But yeah, the Royal Courts of Justice, that's where Assange was tried in February of 2024. I also wanted to mention this excellent declassified article that was published yesterday by Martin Williams. Israeli weapons firms set to close their UK wing. This was an investigative article and journalism from Declassified that started to dig into this company, Raphael, and their UK subsidiary, and it found that it basically was an intel front. It was a shadow of a company. It didn't really exist. I could have easily put this in the Fuck Israel segment, but I didn't. But I definitely want people to take a look at this one. All right. Our UK System Limited is registered in London, but records show that it's a subsidiary of Israel's state-owned arms giant, Raphael. How are they allowed to operate in the UK? All right. They donated at least $1,500 to partner with a cross-party group of MPs. How is that legal? Westminster authorities subsequently launched an inquiry into the APPG's chairman, and the group quickly disbanded. Oof. So they tried to co-opt and buy off lawmakers. That didn't happen. Now the firm has launched a so-called First Gazette notice to Companies House, which initiates the process of closing it. Right. They claim that the disclosure is not linked to Declassified's investigation, but no official reason has yet been given. All right. That this building was empty for 6 years. This is crazy.
An arms company owned by the Israeli government has just taken its entire website offline after our investigation revealed that it had given money to a group of British politicians.
And now it seems to have disappeared altogether.
The building is empty.
It's empty?
Yeah, for the last 6 years or something like that.
6 years?
Yeah.
The company documents show that they're registered here.
Yes.
There doesn't seem to be any sign of them.
It's called RUK Advanced Systems Limited, and officially it's registered in London. The website claims, "We're good people committed to creating positive change." So let's have a look at some of the nice things that these good people do. Well, they sell missiles designed for urban combat, and they sell torpedoes with hard kill capabilities.
These are the official documents from when RUK Advanced Systems Limited was set up in 2022.
They show that although it's registered in London, all the shares in the company are actually held by Raphael, which is a state-owned Israeli arms firm. Raphael was founded in 1948 under an arm of the Israeli Defense Forces, and it's been responsible for making many of the missiles and drones that Israel uses to bomb Gaza. In particular, their infamous spike-guided missiles have been called out for causing huge numbers of civilian casualties. Recently, Raphael even made a promo video that showed its drone system tracking and killing someone in Gaza.
Jesus. All right. So go watch this video. Go support Declassified UK, another Indie Media Award honoree for top outlet, and support independent media in general. Before we cut out of here, I'm going to get to the GoFundMes, but first we're going to ask if you can and are able to support independent media with a tip of the network. Ways to do that: Cash App, $ Indie News Network, co-v.com/Indie News Network. You got paypal.me/Indie News Network. Do that as friends and family. You got the website, IndieNewsNow.com. And that's where we're live right now. You can also check out news. And then the Substacks, IndieMediaToday.com, where we are live right now, and INNNewsletter.com, where you can get a weekly update of all the different shows at INN. And articles and everything. Yeah, battle-tested, genocide approved. That's right, Ghost Start. Damn, over on Rumble. Okay, so finally, we're going to get to the GoFundMes and updates on our friends. I saw there was something from Anthony. I hadn't had a chance to look at it yet. Oh, wrong slide. Okay. Shanda. We've been talking about Shanda fighting small cell lung cancer that's been spreading. And she had a good day Saturday night. They did a live Beauty and the Boomer, Oz and Shanda. Go check that out. She said, Saturday night, I felt great. Today, not so great. I'm home now, but spent all day writhing in pain. My immune system crashed again. They pumped me full of meds and said I'd be safer at home than in the hospital where I can catch something even worse. I'm so ready for this round of chemo to be over. Thank you all for your love and support. It always carries me through days like today. When not COVID, but I meant when cancer was kicking her ass a little bit. But in the end, she's kicking cancer's ass. We love you, Shanda. And you're gonna win. You know, we're gonna beat it however we can for as long as we can. Do all we can. And there's Shanda's GoFundMe. Again, it's up to almost 6,500. If you're able to and it means, please support Shanda in her GoFundMe of cancer. Okay. So that's that link. All right. Then we've also got Natalia. And again, the last I had heard from Anthony, which was that Natalia was set to be deported. And that is really scary. Don't know about her daughter. I'm guessing her daughter too. They're trying to do that. We're working on keeping her here, I guess, because we certainly don't want her to have to go back with her mom and then figure out how to get them both back here. Holy crap. And who's got the money to do all that? Again, she was abducted, taken by ICE at a routine traffic stop and put in jail. And she's been there since July, June. It's been months for no reason. And like we talked about, we read about this article, how Ohio has been disappearing immigrants, even who were here legally and going through the process, but they figured out a way to disappear people. 4th of July. Thank you, Cowboy Kitty. Appreciate it. They are deporting her to Ukraine. Her daughter is safe for now. Thank you for the update. And again, I'm so sorry for what she's having to go through, and for you and the family, and prayers for her and for her daughter, of course. I'm glad you were able to get some cash over to her. Again, $1,750 raised already. We need a bunch more if possible. If anybody's got the ability to support, please do. Then we've also finally got, well, not finally now, we've got one more. Justice for Aspen. We had the fundraiser a couple of weeks ago. Aspen is facing decades in prison. She was in the wrong car. She took an RV ride with a friend of a friend to a music festival. That RV got pulled over on the way back to where they had come from. And turns out that guy had massive amounts of drugs and was trafficking drugs. And they've both been charged with drug trafficking federally, possibly, maybe just state charges, but they've got to get through discovery. They've got to get a lawyer hired, and we've got to get through the next steps to figure out what we can do to try to avoid her having to spend decades of her adulthood in prison. So Justice for Aspen, linktr.ee/Justice for Aspen, has links to the fundraiser live stream, has a link to her GoFundMe as well. So I'm going to drop that link here so everyone that's able to go to that link tree and check out even Aspen's artwork. You can commission or buy it. That also will help support her. And again, this is Aspen's GoFundMe, where they've gotten to 8,800, but we've really kind of stalled out a little bit. Again, I love you. Thank you, Ralph. I saw Ralph's name up there. Sabine, thank you. Amber King, love you. Seriously, so many people have stepped up. Kieran Pine in this chat, $100. So many people, but everybody, we need as much as we can. They need tens of thousands. It's sadly, it's rough. But not only did we, and I really appreciate everybody what they did donate to support for Aspen's fundraiser, but in that process, we also lost Charlie Mack's Twitter account. So they accused Charlie Mack of violating their rules. They never really described what that rule was. My guess is that he was sharing too much. At Charlie Mack 1912, Paula Iacella has been a champion. Paula also is an Indie Media Award honoree for activism, and look at her living up to her title, all right, and getting active on Charlie's behalf to try to get his account reinstated. I spoke to Charlie this week on Substack DMs. He's doing well. He loves everyone. He appreciates all the support. And if you can, hashtag reinstate Charlie Mack 1912. Reinstate Charlie Mack 1912 will be the hashtag that we try to use to try to raise awareness and get people on board. So that was all I had for tonight. Oh, I had one other thing, and of course it's Indie News Now. Let's give it a refresh, because this does update 24/7 with fresh articles. So we've got Simplicius, and we've got videos from Odyssey. That's Dave DeCamp's Anti-War News. We've got videos from Rumble. We've got, I think that's Garland Nixon. Okay, that's his Rumble channel. A Skeptic, thank you, includes us quite often in their daily The Stack. You've got Caitlin Johnstone and Decensored News, another Indie Media Award honoree. Same thing with Caitlin. Okay, Anti-War, like we said, original articles and news from Anti-War from Dave DeCamp, from Jason Ditz, from Kyle Lanzalone. Steer Post, another outstanding Indie Media Award-winning outlet. You've got The Homeless Left with Matt Weinglass. We also have Jason Burmis, if you like Jason Burmis and the Independent Media Alliance. TLAV, we've got stuff from TLAV. Hey, look at that, an announcement about this show becoming Indie News Now. So this is just an endless scroll of articles. It will never stop. Again, another Indie Media Award honoree, Left Voice. So again, a lot of the best that you'll find here. The Dissident. So you'll see a lot of things, a lot of outlets that I find are trustworthy, that get it right more often than not. But you can also get merch from here, and that is our merch store, where you can pick up shirts, beanies, sweatshirts, tank tops. Also, there is the Keep the News Free, again, where you can support with a Stripe contribution, and using any of these methods, Google Pay, Amazon Pay, any kind of link, you name it, they accept it. And then again, we've got the Watch Live. So anytime INN is live or simulcasting, you'll see that live here. And you can always chat over on this Discord. If you click on the link there, it'll give you access to the Discord server, or it should. If it doesn't, let me know. But it should give you access to the Discord server that mirrors all the chats from YouTube and Kick and Twitch and sometimes Rumble. All right. And I'm spent. And this was another Tuesday night. I appreciate everyone hanging out, covering the news with me, and letting me rant and scream about Israel and scream about ICE and share some of the other things that are in my world that I see coming across my news feed throughout the week that I don't necessarily see other people talking about as much. So we're going to keep doing this. Again, support independent media, because we need it more than ever. I will see you all next week, next Tuesday night. See you next Tuesday. That'll be part of the call sign to sign off. And again, give everyone a round of applause. Thursday night, we're going to have American Tradition with Jesse Jett, so check that out. And tomorrow night, we'll have INN News with Reef and Colin, 9 p.m. Eastern, so check that out. So support independent media, like I said. We need it more than ever. I'll see you next week, and I love you all, fam. Have a good night. no! We just fucking lost the stream!
I think I liked it better being blind, when I couldn't read between the lines, and when I couldn't see the cracks in the structure that lay bare before me the whole time. I think I liked it better back when I suspended disbelief and swallowed pride. I thought I knew the difference in the red from the blue, but they both bleed us so dry. They both bleed us so dry.
My favorite songs don't hit the same way. I get to the end of a 4-minute track and I'm only looking back thinking, what did they actually say?
I guess this isn't such an awful place. Is that what you want